Zara pressed her thin fingers against the cold metal wall of her cell. 5 years. 5 years since the Krell ships darkened the skies of her homeworld. 5 years since she had seen the twin moons of Viridia. 5 years of pain dot the neural interface. At the base of her skull buzzed with activity, sending sharp jolts down her spine. The mining vessel harvester needed her skills again. As a navigator with rare spatial awareness, Zara was too valuable to kill, but not valuable enough to treat. With dignity. Navigation Unit 739. Report to Command Station. A voice boomed through the small speaker in her cell. They never used her name anymore. To the Krell, she was just a tool, a piece of equipment with a number. Zara stood slowly, her once graceful movements now stiff and pained. Her blue skin had paled to a sickly gray from years without sunlight. The simple gray jumpsuit hung loosely on her frame. The Krell kept her fed just enough to stay alive, and functional. 2 guards appeared at her cell door. Both reptilian Krell stood nearly 7 feet tall, their scaled skin gleaming under the harsh lights. They wore the black armor of the Imperium, with pride, energy batons hanging at their sides. Move, the first guard said. He didn't bother with the baton. Zara had stopped resisting long ago. The halls of the harvester stretched endlessly, a maze of metal and machinery. Other alien slaves like her worked silently, keeping their eyes down as the guards passed. Some were loading ore onto carts. Others repaired equipment. All wore the same dead expression Zara saw in her reflection. They reached the navigation chamber. Commander Vrex stood waiting, his tail swishing with impatience. Unlike the guards, his scales were deep crimson, marking him as part of the Krell elite. You're slow today. 7-3-9, Rex said. His voice sounded like stones grinding together. The harvester needs to reach the Cygnus belt by the next cycle. The mining quota has increased. Zara nodded without speaking. Words led to punishment. Prepare for neural connection, Rex ordered. Zara sat in the navigation chair. Cold metal. Restraints automatically closed around her wrists and ankles. A technician approached with the primary neural link, a crown of metal, and wires that would connect directly with the implant in her skull. The pain when they connected her was always the worst part. Zara bit her lip until she tasted blood as the technician lowered the device onto her head. When the connection activated, she couldn't hold back a small cry. It felt like fire pouring into her brain. Pathetic, Rex muttered. Begin navigation sequence. The ship's systems flooded Zara's mind. Star charts, gravitational fields, radiation patterns all became visible to her inner eye. This was why the Krell kept her alive. Viridians could process spatial data faster than any computer, and more accurately than any other species the Krell had enslaved. Plot course to Cygnus mining belt, maximum efficiency, Rex commanded. Zara began the calculations. Through the pain, she reached out with her mind, feeling the currents of space, the hidden pathways between stars. This ability had once brought her joy. Her people had been explorers before the Krell came. Now her gift was just another chain dot. She found the path and fed the coordinates into the ship's system. The massive engines of the harvester rumbled to life. Outside, the stars began to shift as the ship changed direction. Estimated arrival time? Vrex demanded. 42 hours, sir, the technician answered after reading Zara's data. Vrex's scales darkened with anger. Too slow. Find a faster route. Sir, this is already the most efficient, the technician began. I said faster. Vrex slammed his fist on the console. The Overseer wants those resources now. Zara closed her eyes. There was another route, a dangerous one through a region with unpredictable radiation. It would save 12 hours, but required constant navigation adjustments. It would mean staying connected to the neural interface the entire time. She hesitated. 30 hours connected would likely cause permanent damage to her brain. But refusing would mean punishment or worse. Zara sent the new coordinates to the system. The technician looked surprised. New route calculated. Arrival in 30 hours. Rex nodded with satisfaction. Begin immediately. He leaned close to Zara. See what happens when you actually try. 7 minus 3 minus 9? Perhaps you need more motivation to perform efficiently. He turned to the technician. Increase neural load by 20%. And reduce her rations for the next week. Zara's hands gripped the chair as the pain intensified. The edges of her vision darkened, but she forced herself to stay conscious. She had to maintain the connection. Hours passed. Zara's mind drifted between pain and memories. She remembered the floating cities of Viridia, the songs of her people at the Festival of Lights, her sister's laugh, the day she graduated from the Navigation Academy, so proud in her blue uniform. All gone now. Her family was either dead or enslaved like her. The Krell had no use for Viridian culture, only Viridian abilities. Navigation unit showing signs of stress. A distant voice said, irrelevant. Maintain course, came Rex's reply. 20-6 hours into the journey, Zara made a mistake. Her concentration slipped for just a moment, and the ship veered slightly off course. Alarms blared. Rex was instantly at the console. What happened? He demanded. Minor course deviation. Corrected now, the technician said nervously. Rex moved to Zara's chair. You failed again. After we reach Cygnus, you will spend 3 days in isolation. Zara barely heard him. Through her connection to the ship's sensors, something had caught her attention. A star system on the edge of her awareness. One that didn't appear in any of the Krell charts flowing through her mind. She carefully kept this information hidden, tucking it away in a corner of her consciousness where the neural link couldn't reach. It was probably nothing important. Just an uncharted system of no value to the Krell mining operation. But it was something they didn't know. A small secret. And secrets were rare treasures for slaves. When they finally disconnected her from the system, Zara couldn't walk. The guards dragged her back to her cell and tossed her onto the hard sleeping platform. Alone in the darkness, Zara curled into herself. The pain would fade, as it always did, leaving behind a dull ache and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring more of the same. There was no escape from the Harvester, no rescue coming, no hope. But as she drifted into exhausted sleep, the image of that unknown star system floated in her mind. Small, distant, unimportant. She didn't know that in that very system, a ship called the Dauntless was about to change everything. The bridge of the USS Dauntless hummed with activity. Captain Alan Foster sat in the command chair, watching his crew work with quiet pride. The exploration vessel wasn't the biggest in Earth's fleet, but it was one of the fastest and certainly the most advanced in this sector. Captain, I'm picking up unusual energy readings, Megan Kelly said from the communication station. Her fingers moved quickly over the glowing display. They're coming from grid sector 47, near the edge of charted space. Foster turned his chair toward her. What kind of readings? Hard to say at this distance. Megan adjusted her instruments. But they're artificial. Definitely not natural phenomena. Foster nodded and turned to his science officer, Dr. Rivera. Your thoughts? Sam Rivera was already studying the data on his screen. His dark eyes narrowed in concentration. The pattern suggests large-scale industrial activity, mining or processing operations. But the energy signature doesn't match any known human technology. A tall woman with short gray hair stepped forward from her station. Captain, this could be first contact material, First Officer Diane Powell said quietly. We should approach with caution. Foster considered this. Humanity had encountered only 3 other spacefaring species in their 50 years of interstellar Travel. All 3 meetings had been peaceful, but Earth Command always stressed careful protocols for unknown encounters. Agreed, Foster said, but we need to investigate. Helm, set course for those coordinates. 1/4 speed, and activate the cloaking system. The young helmsman nodded. Aye, Captain, course laid in. The Dauntless turned gracefully and accelerated toward the distant energy source. The cloaking technology, Earth's most closely guarded. Advantage wrapped around the ship like an invisible blanket. 4 hours later, they arrived at the edge of an asteroid belt. What they found stunned everyone on the bridge. My God, Powell whispered. A massive operation spread before them. Dozens of ships, some larger than anything in Earth's fleet, moved methodically through the asteroid field. Smaller vessels cut chunks from the larger rocks, while enormous factory ships processed the material. Energy beams sliced through stone and metal with frightening efficiency. Scan those ships, Foster ordered. I want to know who we're dealing with. Rivera worked his console. Captain, I'm detecting multiple species on those vessels, but most of them show signs of physical stress, malnutrition, injuries. He looked up, his face grim. I believe we're looking at slave labor. A cold silence fell over the bridge. Can you identify any of the species? Foster asked. Some match records from our previous encounters with the Tellurians. There are others I don't recognize. Rivera pointed to his screen. But these larger reptilian life forms appear to be in control. They're the only ones moving freely, carrying weapons. Powell moved closer to Foster's chair. Captain, this isn't our jurisdiction. Earth Command's directives are clear about interfering with other civilizations. Foster's jaw tightened. Slavery isn't a cultural difference, Diane. It's a crime. I agree, she said. But we're one ship. They have a fleet. Foster was about to respond when Megan called out from her station. Captain, one of their patrol ships has changed course. They're heading in our direction. Have they detected us? Foster asked. I don't think so, Rivera said. They appear to be on a standard patrol route, but they'll pass within 50 kilometers of our position. Foster made a quick decision. Maintain cloak. Hold position. The patrol ship grew larger on the view screen. It was sleek and predatory, bristling with weapons. As it passed near them, everyone on the bridge held their breath. Suddenly, alarms blared. They've locked some kind of scanning beam on us. Rivera shouted. Our cloak is still holding, but they've detected something. The patrol ship turned sharply, weapons powering up. They're firing. Powell warned. Evasive maneuvers, Foster ordered. Shields up. The Dauntless swerved just as energy blasts tore through the space they had occupied. The ship shuddered. Minor damage to outer hull, Rivera reported. Shields holding at 92%. Foster gripped the arms of his chair. We need to end this quickly. Target their engines and weapons systems. Disable only, not destroy. The weapons officer nodded. Targeting solutions ready, sir. Fire. The Dauntless's precision beam weapons lanced out, slicing through the patrol ship's engine housing and weapon. Mounts. The smaller vessel spun out of control, its lights flickering. Direct hit, the weapons officer reported. Their systems are failing. Life signs? Foster asked. 3 crew members. All still alive, Rivera confirmed. Foster stood. Bring that ship aboard. Cargo Bay 2. Full security team. Powell stepped forward. Captain, are you sure that's wise? No, Foster admitted. But I want answers. An hour later, Foster stood outside the makeshift cell in Cargo Bay 2. Behind the energy barrier, 3 reptilian aliens sat sullenly. They were impressive specimens, nearly 7 feet tall, with muscular bodies covered in thick scales. Their yellow eyes tracked Foster's movements with clear intelligence, and even clearer hatred. "They refuse to speak, Captain," the security chief reported. "We've tried standard first contact protocols in all known languages. Nothing." Foster studied the aliens. "What have we learned from their ship? Not much. Their computer systems are encrypted, but Dr. Rivera managed to access some star charts. These beings the security team is calling them Krell, based on repeated terms in their beta control, a significant empire across several sectors. Far larger than we realized existed out here." Foster frowned. "And the slave operation? Based on the charts and some translated manifests, that's just one of many. They're systematically stripping resources from dozens of star systems using enslaved labor from conquered worlds." Foster felt a cold weight in his stomach. Earth and its colonies had no idea such a threat existed so close to their borders. The Krell Empire dwarfed human territory. "What about the energy signature we detected?" Foster asked. "It seems to be coming from their largest ship, the one in the center of their formation." Foster looked at the display showing the massive vessel. It was easily 3 times the size of the Dauntless, with heavy armor and multiple weapon emplacements. But what caught his attention was the unusual energy pattern emanating from what appeared to be the navigation section. "That's not mechanical," Foster said, pointing to the reading. "That's biological." The security chief looked closer. "You're right. Something or someone alive is generating that energy signature, possibly some kind of biological navigation system." Foster turned away from the cell, his mind racing. A civilization that enslaved others. A being used as a living navigation system. The implications were disturbing. "Call the senior staff to the briefing room," he ordered, "and contact Earth Command. They need to know what we've found." As Foster walked toward the lift, he looked back at the captive Krell. They had discovered something far more dangerous than they had expected on this routine survey mission. But they had also discovered something else, a terrible injustice. And Alan Foster had never been good at ignoring those dots in the navigation chamber of the Harvester. Zara opened her eyes. Through her connection to the ship's systems, she had felt something strange. A brief disturbance at the edge of their sensor range. Commander Vrex had dismissed it as an asteroid collision, but Zara knew better. It was a ship. A ship unlike any in the Krell database. For the first time in years, she felt something stir within her. It wasn't quite hope. She had forgotten what hope felt like, but it was something close to it. Something dangerous. Lieutenant Kyle Rogers checked his equipment one last time. The adaptive camouflage suit fit snugly against his body. When activated, it would change color and texture to match his surroundings. Not perfect invisibility, but close enough if he moved carefully. "This is a terrible idea," First Officer Powell said from across the briefing room. "You're proposing to infiltrate an alien vessel with unknown defenses, unknown layout, and a crew that would almost certainly kill you on sight." Rogers fastened the last strap on his gear. "That's why I volunteered, ma'am. Special Forces training. I know how to move unseen." Captain Foster stood at the head of the table. After 2 days studying the Krell from a safe distance, he had made his decision. "The intelligence we've gathered confirms the Krell are a serious threat to Earth and our allies. But more immediately, they're holding sentient beings as slaves. That largest ship, the Harvester, seems to be using a living navigator." Dr. Rivera nodded. "The energy patterns are unmistakable, biological in nature, but connected to their navigation systems. Whoever is generating that energy is suffering. The patterns show clear signs of neural distress." Foster turned to Rogers. "Your mission is simple in concept, difficult in execution. Get aboard that ship. Gather intelligence on their defenses, their numbers, and most importantly, on the beings they've enslaved, then get out. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Rogers nodded. "The captured patrol ship will get me close. After that, I'll use the maintenance airlocks we identified in our scans." Powell still looked unhappy. "Earth Command hasn't authorized this mission. By the time we get a response, the Krell mining operation could be gone," Foster replied. "Sometimes we have to make field decisions." An hour later, Rogers sat in the cockpit of the captured Krell vessel. The controls had been modified to work for human hands, and the ship's transponder still showed active Krell codes. "Remember," Foster's voice came through his earpiece, "your extraction window is 12 hours. After that, we'll have to fall back to secondary protocols." "Understood, Captain," Rogers replied. "Launching now." The small patrol ship slid out of the Dauntless's cargo bay. Rogers guided it toward the massive harvester, trying to mimic the flight patterns they had observed from. Other Krell vessels. His heart pounded as he approached the gigantic ship. Up close, the harvester was even more intimidating. Its hull was scarred from years of service, but its weapons looked well-maintained and deadly. Rogers guided the patrol ship into a standard approach pattern. When he was close enough, he activated the autopilot they had programmed. The ship would continue on a patrol route while he made his move. Carefully, he sealed his suit and opened the airlock. The void of space greeted him, silent and cold. Using his maneuvering pack, Rogers pushed away from the patrol ship and drifted toward the harvester's hull. The maintenance airlock was right where their scans had shown. Rogers attached himself to the hull and worked quickly with the electronic bypass tool Dr. Rivera had created. After tense minutes, the outer door slid open. Once inside and with air restored, Rogers activated his adaptive camouflage. The suit rippled and then took on the metallic gray color of the corridor walls. "I'm in," he whispered into his communicator. The signal would be relayed through quantum entanglement impossible for the Krell to detect. "Copy that," came Foster's voice. "Proceed with caution." The corridors of the harvester were dimly lit and surprisingly warm. Rogers moved slowly, pressing against walls whenever he heard footsteps approaching. The Krell were even more intimidating. Up close, their yellow eyes seemed to miss nothing, and the casual cruelty they showed to the smaller aliens scurrying about was chilling. Rogers documented everything with his suit's recording systems. He saw beings of at least a dozen different species, all wearing similar gray jumpsuits, all moving with the defeated posture of the long enslaved. After an hour of careful movement, Rogers found himself in what appeared to be a processing center. Krell officers directed the loading of refined ore onto smaller transport vessels. The enslaved workers moved like machines, their movements mechanical and lifeless. Rogers carefully made his way toward the ship's center, where their scans had detected the biological navigation source. Security increased as he got closer. Twice, he had to remain perfectly still as Krell guards passed within inches of him. Finally, he reached a sealed doorway with Krell markings. The electronic bypass tool worked again, though more slowly this time. When the door slid open, Rogers slipped inside. What he saw made him freeze. In the center of the room sat a chair surrounded by blinking equipment. In the chair was a thin, blue-skinned alien female. Her head was encased in a metal crown-like device with wires running into her skull. Her eyes were open but unfocused, seeing something beyond the room. Several Krell technicians monitored nearby consoles. One spoke harshly to the seated figure. "Navigation Unit 739. Adjust course 2 degrees to avoid radiation pocket." The blue alien's fingers twitched, and the displays changed. The ship vibrated slightly as it altered course. Rogers waited until the technicians moved to a far console for some kind of shift change. Then he moved closer to the alien in the chair. Up close, he could see the evidence of years of abuse. Her blue skin was marked with old scars. Her body was thin to the point of starvation. But what struck him most were her eyes intelligent. Eyes that had seen too much suffering. The decision wasn't part of his mission, but Rogers made it anyway. He couldn't leave her here. When the technicians had their backs turned, Rogers deactivated his camouflage and stepped into the alien's field. A vision. Her eyes widened in shock. "I'm going to help you," Rogers whispered. "I'm human. From Earth." The alien stared at him in confusion and fear. Rogers examined the neural crown. With careful movements, he disconnected it using the medical training from his field kit. As the connections broke, the alien gasped in pain. The technicians turned. At the sound, one shouted something in the harsh Krell language and reached for an alarm panel. Rogers moved instantly. A stunned pulse from his weapon dropped the first technician. The second managed to hit the alarm before a second pulse knocked him unconscious. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Rogers quickly freed the alien from the restraints on the chair. She collapsed into his arms, too weak to stand. "My name is Kyle," he said, reactivating his camouflage and adjusting it to cover them both. "What's yours?" The alien's voice was raspy from disuse. "Zara. I am Zara. Zara, I need your help to get out of here." "Do you know this ship?" She nodded weakly. 5 years. "I know every corridor." Rogers supported her weight. "We need to find a way to my extraction point, or somewhere to hide until my ship can help us." Zara struggled to her feet, leaning heavily against him. "The maintenance tunnels. A Krell are too large to follow easily." As the sound of running feet echoed from the corridor, Rogers made another quick decision. "Lead the way." Zara pointed to a small panel near the floor. "There." As Rogers helped her toward it, Zara looked at him with confusion. "Why would you risk yourself for me?" Rogers worked to open the panel. "Because where I come from, freedom isn't just for humans. It's for everyone." The panel slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel. As they crawled inside, Zara felt something she had nearly forgotten. Not quite hope. Not yet. But its first fragile beginnings. The maintenance tunnel was hot and narrow. Rogers crawled forward with Zara close behind him. His camouflage suit had been adjusted to its normal black color to help them see each other in the dim emergency lighting. "How far to the nearest exit?" Rogers whispered. Zara's voice was still weak, but growing stronger as the effects of the neural connection faded. 3 more junctions. Then we can access the lower cargo area." Rogers touched his communicator. "Captain, this is Rogers. I've located the navigation source. It's a sentient being, a female alien named Zara. She's been held captive and used as a living navigation system. I've freed her, but our extraction is complicated. We're in the maintenance tunnels trying to reach the original exit point." Static answered him. The thick metal of the harvester's hull was blocking their signal. "Your people cannot hear you," Zara said. "A Krell lined these tunnels with signal dampeners to prevent slave communication." Rogers nodded. "Then we're on our own until we can get closer to the hull." They continued moving through the cramped space. Occasionally they would hear the heavy footsteps of Krell guards above them, or the frightened movements of other slaves in distant tunnels. Zara stopped at a junction. "We must be careful here. This opens near a guard post." Rogers peered through the small grate. 2 Krell guards stood watching a group of thin, gray-skinned aliens unloading supplies. "We'll wait," Rogers whispered as they huddled in the tight space. Zara studied the human. His kind face was unlike the harsh features of the Krell. His gentle handling of her injuries was something she had not experienced in years. "Your species humans, I have never heard of them," she said quietly. Rogers smiled. "We're relatively new to deep space. Earth only developed faster than light travel about 50 years ago." "And you fight the Krell?" "We didn't know about them until a few days ago." Our ship was mapping resources when we detected their mining operation. Zara's eyes widened. You came here by accident? Rogers nodded. But once we saw what was happening, Captain Foster couldn't just ignore it. The concept seemed to confuse. Zara, your leaders sent you to free slaves that are not your own kind? To gather intelligence first. The freeing part was my decision. Rogers checked the guard post again. But yes, humans don't believe in slavery. Not for any species. A new emotion flickered across Zara's face, something like wonder. The guards finally moved away from their post. Rogers carefully opened the grate, and they slipped out into a storage area. Zara's legs were still weak, and she stumbled. Rogers caught her before she fell. The extraction point is 2 levels up, Rogers said, consulting his small holomap. But there will be Krell everywhere by now. Zara looked thoughtful. There is another way. The prisoner holding area is on this level. If we free the others, the confusion might help us escape. Rogers considered this. It wasn't the mission he was sent on, but leaving the other slaves behind felt wrong. How many prisoners? Hundreds. From dozens of worlds. Rogers made his decision. Lead the way. They moved carefully through the lower-level corridors. Twice they had to hide as Krell search parties passed. Finally, they reached a large sealed door with warning symbols. This is it, Zara whispered. The main holding area for new captives and punishment cases. Rogers studied the door's security system. It was more complex than the others he had bypassed. This will take time to open. I can help, Zara said. She placed her hand on the control panel. The Krell think we cannot operate their systems without supervision, but I have watched them enter codes for years. Her thin fingers moved across the panel with surprising speed. The door's locks disengaged with a heavy clunk. Inside was a massive chamber filled with rows of cells. Aliens of all descriptions looked up in surprise as the door opened. Some cowered in fear, expecting punishment. Others watched with dull curiosity. Who will help us fight? Zara called out, her voice stronger than Rogers had heard before. Silence greeted her words. Years of brutal treatment had crushed the spirit of most prisoners. Then a deep voice answered from a cell near the back. I will fight. The speaker was an enormous alien with leathery gray skin and 4 powerful arms. One eye was clouded and scarred, but the other burned with intelligence and anger. Nex, Zara said. They captured him 2 years ago. His people were warriors before the Krell destroyed their world. Rogers moved quickly to the cell controls, releasing the locks. The doors slid open throughout the chamber. Listen to me, Rogers said, addressing the confused prisoners. I'm Lieutenant Kyle Rogers from the Earthship Dauntless. We're here to help, but we need to move quickly. Nex stepped forward. His massive frame made even Rogers look small. Why would your people help us? Because it's right, Rogers answered. Simply Nex studied the human, then nodded slowly. My people have a saying, the hand that breaks chains is always a friend. He turned to the other prisoners. This human and Zara have given us a chance. Who will take it? One by one, then in groups, the prisoners stepped forward. Hope fragile and uncertain began to spread through the chamber. We need to reach the upper hangar bay, Rogers said. My ship can send shuttles, but we need to clear the area first. Nex gathered the strongest prisoners. We will clear the way. The smaller ones can follow behind. Rogers activated his communicator again, hoping they were close enough to an outer hull to get a signal. Captain Foster, this is Rogers. Do you copy? This time, a faint reply came through. Rogers, we've been trying to reach you. What's your status? I've freed the navigation prisoner, and we're now releasing others. Requesting immediate extraction at the main hangar bay. We'll have several hundred refugees. There was a pause before Foster replied. Several hundred? Rogers, we don't have capacity for that many. Then we'll need to take control of some of their transport vessels as well, Rogers said. These people need help, Captain. Another pause. Understood. We're moving into position now. Expect support in 20 minutes. Foster out. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. A harsh voice spoke in the Krell language, followed by a translation in several other tongues. All security forces to level 3. Prisoner escape in progress. Lethal force authorized. Next looked at Rogers. They know. Rogers nodded. Then we move now. Zara, stay close to me. The mass of prisoners surged forward, led by Nex and several other large aliens. They encountered the first Krell guards at the corridor junction. The fight was brief, but violent. The freed prisoners, despite their weakened state, outnumbered. The guards dot as they fought their way upward. Zara stayed near Rogers. Her strength was returning, and with it, a fierce determination. For 5 years, she had been property, a tool. Now she was fighting back. They reached a service lift that would take them to the hangar level. As the doors opened on the upper deck, they found themselves face to face with a line of Krell guards led by a familiar crimson-scaled figure. Commander Vrex, Zara whispered. Vrex's yellow eyes narrowed as he recognized her. Navigation unit. 7-3-9. You have damaged valuable Krell property by disconnecting yourself. The punishment will be severe. Rogers stepped in front of Zara, his weapon raised. She's not property. None of them are. Vrex looked at the human with contempt. So, the rumors are true. A new species has interfered with Krell business. He drew his energy baton. You will learn what happens to those who challenge the Imperium. The corridor erupted in chaos as prisoners and guards clashed. Rogers fired his weapon, dropping 2 Krell, before being forced to duck behind a support beam as return fire blazed past him. Through the smoke and confusion, Zara saw the hangar bay doors. Just beyond the fighting. Freedom was only meters away, if they could reach it. The fight in the corridor intensified. Nex and his fellow warriors pushed forward against the Krell guards, but Commander Vrex and his elite soldiers held their position, blocking the hangar bay doors. Rogers pulled Zara behind a fallen cargo container. As energy blasts scorched the walls around them, "We need to get to those doors," he said. Through the smoke, Zara saw Vrex shouting orders to his troops. The commander's crimson scales seemed to glow with rage. For 5 years, that face had been the source of her pain and degradation. Now it stood between her and freedom. The control panel, Zara said, pointing to a wall unit near Vrex. It can open the hangar doors remotely, but we cannot reach it. Rogers touched his communicator. Captain Foster, we're pinned down outside. The main hangar. Any chance of support? This time the reply came through clearly. We're approaching the harvester now. Stand by? Suddenly, the massive ship shuddered. Emergency lights flashed as something struck the outer hull. The Dauntless, Rogers said with a grin. They're here. Through the viewport windows, they could see the sleek human vessel firing precision shots at the harvester's weapon systems. Unlike the brutal Krell ships, the Dauntless moved with grace, its advanced technology allowing it to disable rather than destroy. Vrex snarled orders into his communicator. Some of the Krell guards broke off from the corridor fight and ran toward defensive positions. Now's our chance, Rogers said. He looked at Zara. Can you make it to that control panel? She studied the distance, then nodded. Yes, I'll provide covering fire. Rogers readied his weapon. Zara took a deep breath. After years of captivity, her body was weak, but her determination was strong. As Rogers began firing at the remaining guards, she darted from behind the container. Energy. Blasts sizzled past her as she ran. One struck the floor near her feet, but she kept moving. The control panel was just meters away now. Vrex saw her and turned with a roar of anger. He raised his weapon, but Nex charged into him from the side. The massive four-armed alien grappled with the Krell commander, giving Zara the seconds she needed. Her fingers flew over the familiar controls. The hangar bay doors began to slide open, revealing the star-filled space beyond. Through the opening, she could see Earth shuttles approaching, escorted by the Dauntless's fighter craft. "Rogers," she called, "the doors are open." The human fought his way to her side, firing his weapon with precision. "Captain," he said into his communicator, "we've secured the hangar entrance. Begin evacuation immediately." The Earth shuttles entered the hangar bay, touching down amid the chaos. Their doors opened, and armed human soldiers rushed out, establishing a defensive perimeter. "Get the prisoners aboard," Rogers ordered. The freed slaves moved toward the shuttles, at first hesitantly, then with growing speed as they realized escape was truly possible. Vrex finally broke free from Nex's grip. The Krell commander's scales were scratched and bleeding, but his eyes burned with fury. "You cannot steal Krell property," he hissed. "The Imperium will hunt you across the galaxy." More Krell forces were arriving now, pouring into the far end of the hangar. The human soldiers returned fire, covering the evacuation. "Lieutenant Rogers," a voice called from the nearest shuttle. "Captain's orders. We need to upload the ship's database before we leave. It contains locations of other slave operations." Rogers looked at Zara. "Can you help with that?" She nodded. "The main data terminals are there." She pointed to a control station at the side of the hangar. "But it will take time to bypass the security." "Time we don't have," Rogers said, looking at the advancing Krell troops. Zara's expression hardened. "There is another way." She touched the back of her neck, where the neural interface port remained embedded in her skull. "I can connect directly." "It will be painful, but fast." Rogers shook his head. "No. That thing nearly killed you before. And now it can help save others," she replied. "My choice, Kyle Rogers." After a moment, he nodded. They ran to the data terminal, dodging energy blasts. A human soldier provided cover as Zara found the connection cables. She hesitated only briefly before attaching them to her neural port. Pain flashed across her face as the connection activated, but her fingers moved with purpose across the controls. "I'm sending everything," she gasped. "Ship locations, slave manifests, defense codes." Vrex saw what she was doing and screamed in rage. He fought his way toward them, killing 2 human soldiers in his path. "Hurry," Rogers urged, firing at approaching Krell troops. Zara's eyes were unfocused, seeing data rather than the physical world. Almost ... done ... Vrex was only meters away now, his energy baton raised for a killing blow. Complete. Zara cried, disconnecting the cables with a cry of pain. She collapsed into Rogers' arms. Rogers fired at Vrex, striking the commander in the shoulder. The Krell leader staggered, but kept coming. Suddenly, Nex appeared behind Vrex. With one powerful motion, he lifted the Krell commander and threw him across the hangar. "Go!" the four-armed warrior shouted. "We will hold them." Rogers carried Zara toward the waiting shuttle. The last of the freed prisoners were boarding now, with Nex and his fighters providing rearguard dot as they reached the shuttle ramp. Zara looked back at the ship that had been her prison for 5 years. "So many still enslaved," she whispered. "We'll come back for them," Rogers promised. "All of them." The shuttle doors closed as the last defenders boarded. Moments later, they lifted off, racing out of the hangar bay and into open space. The Dauntless moved to protect them, its advanced shields deflecting Krell weapon fire dot in the shuttle's medical bay. Rogers stayed by Zara's side as the doctor treated her injuries. The neural connection had caused damage, but the doctor was confident she would recover. Your captain, Zara said weakly. He risked much for strangers. Rogers smiled. That's humanity at its best. We look out for each other, regardless of species. 2 days later, Zara stood on the observation deck of the Dauntless. The stars stretched before her, no longer seen through the painful filter of a neural interface. Captain Foster had joined her, looking at the star chart she had helped create. With the data you provided, we've identified 23 Krell slave operations, Foster said. Earth Command is organizing a coalition with the Tellurians and other allied species. Zara touched the healing wounds on her neck. The Krell are powerful. They have conquered many worlds. But they've never faced humanity, Foster replied. And we're stubborn when it comes to fighting injustice. Zara turned to look at him. My people, the Viridians, we are not all gone. There are hidden colonies, places the Krell never found. If they could be contacted, they would join your coalition. Foster nodded. And that will be our next mission. Later, as the Dauntless prepared to return to Earth, Rogers found Zara in the ship's garden area. She was touching the leaves of a small plant, marveling at its texture. I forgot what living things felt like, she said as he approached. 5 years with only metal and pain. Rogers sat beside her. The medical team says you're healing well. Your neural pathways are regenerating. Zara looked at him, her eyes clear. And focused? You asked me once why the Krell would risk using living navigators when computers would be safer. Rogers nodded. It is because we can see things machines cannot. Paths between stars that don't appear on any chart. She pointed to the stars visible through the garden's viewport. I could guide your people to my homeworld. Help you find the hidden colonies. Is that what you want? Rogers asked. For the first time since he had known her, Zara smiled. It transformed. Her face, showing the person she had been before captivity. What I want is to see the Krell Imperium fall. To know that no one will ever suffer as I did. She took his hand in her slender blue one. And to learn more about humans who would risk their lives for someone they never met. As the Dauntless jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward Earth and the beginning of a new coalition against tyranny, Zara felt something she had thought forever lost. Not just hope, but certainty. The chains were broken, and they would never bind her again.